Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining me here today. We are going to do a mix of yin and yang styles, or more accurately, yang and yin styles. We're going to start with the yang, with the hard work, with the heat building and strength, and then we're going to cool it right down to the softer yin stuff. So I'll talk us through some of this stuff as we go. I've got all these pages of notes out to try to remember everything, but we are moving into the Kapha season in yoga and Ayurveda, in which we should create warmth and invigorate, but also offer opportunities for stillness and rest, which is why I thought a mixed bag of yin and yang styles would be very appropriate to welcome the spring. You may notice that during this time of year, despite the fact that we have increased levels of daylight and the weather starts to improve, often you can feel quite exhausted. And that is part of the vulnerability that comes from change. So that it might be quite an exhausting time, even though there are changing opportunities. So things like this to create a physical energy shift and then some wind down are perfect. So let's begin in our mountain pose, and we'll start with a mudra for protection. So we can interlace our fingers right in front of the heart, relaxing shoulders down and back away from the ears. We can keep the elbows up, and we are protecting our hearts here. Option to close the eyes if we like. If balance or energy is a concern, you might actually feel better to leave the eyes open. But I always like to say, make sure to relax the muscles around the eyes, even if they stay open. And rather than aimlessly glancing around the room, pick a spot to focus on. So we have a soft focus with the eyes to find our balance and root into the earth, thinking about spring and mud and dirt and new things growing. Let's grow our roots into the earth. And we'll think about our yang energy while we're here. So we're strong, protected, secure. We're already building warmth by standing and using our core muscles to have a tall, confident posture. And we can bring some energy into the body with our breath. Inhaling, deep breath in, feeling the rib cage expand. And with our exhale, holding our abdominal muscles strong. And let's make the length of our exhale the same as the length of our inhale. So often we use counting, in for 4. And out for 4. If we would like a little bit more energy, we can breathe in for 4, pause for 2, and then out for 4. You may also like to leave a little pause at the end of the exhale with the lungs empty. So that'll give us a 4-2-4-2 breath. Try it out, see how it works. Feel free to play with the numbers and the length of the breath a bit. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause is our big idea here. And in the same way that spring can bring a fresh perspective and a new way to feel, let's be open to feeling a different way as we move through our practice here. And we can go ahead, open the eyes if they're closed, release the hands, give the arms a shake, relaxing the fingers, and let's invite some energy into the body, letting that shake from our hands translate through our shoulders and our knees, maybe our heels. If we are feeling sluggish, then this is a good way to wake up the body. Bouncing is really good for our lymphatic system and just in general, a very non-scientific term, to get things going. The feeling of that startup energy. I like to do pretty big heavy bounces with the shoulders. And let's do a different one for the shoulders. We'll slow it right down, grounding the feet. Squeeze the shoulders up. We can make a tight fist if we like. And then relax those shoulders down and back. And let's feel the difference. Big squeeze and really force the shoulders down and back. And then notice what it feels like to squeeze up and then release the shoulders down and back. So we have already this mix of yin and yang. At the very beginning, squeeze up and then release down. Squeeze up and then release down. Let's go just one more. Let's leave the shoulders released down. If we're really forcing them down, it'll probably be hard to keep them like that. So we're just relaxing, letting gravity do the work, keeping length and space between our collarbones and our ears. Let's circle sweep the arms to warm the body. Inhaling up and exhaling, hands down through heart center. We keep going like that a few times through. We're probably familiar with this, and it's good to have our old standards to bring our minds back into focus without too much of a challenge. We'll leave our hands here, and let's do a couple of chair poses to warm up. So we've probably done chair before. We usually say sitting our hips down and back. We should be able to see our toes and give them a little wiggle. And then we stand tall to repeat. So I showed you from the side. You can stay facing me. And we're going to add on here. We are going to make a cocoon for ourselves. So we're crossing our hands across our shoulders and chest, and then we open and spread our beautiful butterfly wings. We can add coordination here. Whichever arm you put on top last time, put the opposite arm on top this time. So that's our pattern. So as we come into some of our yin poses, we can think of that as our cocoon time. Winter is a great time to go within. Even dark, rainy days of spring are a perfect opportunity as well to have some inward time, stillness, grounding. And I like to think of it as digestion, to have this cocooning time. And the physical practice that we're doing here, I think more of this of our food time. So we don't eat 24/7. We know that food is nourishment, and that is great, but we need digestion to make that happen. So we could also think of our yin and yang as food and digestion. Okay, let's do a couple more here. We could do a really strong squeeze back, making fists again. We could cross fists over our chest as well. Okay, last one here. Let's pause with the arms open. We'll all make a fist. Let's pull back, backs the hands towards the wall behind you. And we'll keep pulling back. One of my favorites, turn the head side to side. And then we're working in opposites. So if you're turning your head to the right, squeeze the back of the left shoulder. And if you're turning your head to the left, squeeze the back of the right shoulder. We'll come back to neck and shoulders, but for now, let's sweep it out and let that go. And we'll do flight of the bird. So we'll do some movements to warm up our hips and loosen up. Let's start, if you have some space, stepping backward, that'd be perfect. So probably the top of our mat, and we'll alternate either a lunge or a warrior one. Stepping back, it could be a smaller shape. And we're going to keep going with this yang energy. I'll keep going with you. We're going to pull back a bow and arrow as we go. So just palms tapping at the front, and then pull back that bow and arrow as we come back. So we're sort of stepping through a warrior one into a warrior two as we go. And if you are concerned about your alignment, our big idea is that the knee doesn't wobble all over the place, that we have control in the lower body as we are moving the upper body. Still lots of strength in the upper back here. So as we pull back with the right arm, squeeze the back of the right shoulder. And obviously the same thing on the opposite side. We might want to turn the head with this as we go. Everything following in line. Let's go once more each way, hopefully feeling that we are building heat. We're building that strong, muscular yang energy. We'll come back to the top of the mat. And then let's pull both arms back. And then we can take our thumbs to our shoulders, open up and out. And if your range of motion allows, we can take the hands in behind the head and hold the weight of the head as we go back, as I'm losing my balance while I'm walking around. And it might feel nice to tip side to side, and if hands are on shoulders, we can do the same thing. But I find that pulling that elbow up on one side can give a nice stretch in behind the triceps. And some of us might have a deeper range of motion. We could actually be overlapping the hands in behind the back of the neck and get a little side to side, but letting the weight of the head rest back into the hands if they're back there, or simply lifting the chin. Let's polish this one up. We can release hands back down. Might feel nice to give the shoulders a roll after our arms have been moving around a bunch. And if you are standing at the top of the mat, let's step back to face the long edge. We're going to step our feet wide. So our large muscle groups of our legs, our inner thighs, don't tend to get a lot of work in an average day. So we're going to work them here with our sun pose. Inhaling up, and then exhaling, we can sweep the arms down. So here's our challenge. We want to maintain that yang energy or muscular energy. We could do this, maybe try a couple really floppy, just let yourself slouch, don't really worry about it too much, see how that feels. And then re-engage our yang energy, tall spine. We're keeping shoulders down and back. Even as the arms reach down, shoulders are moving, not forward. Hands may be coming forward, but our shoulders are still moving sort of in a rear direction. Give it a couple more here. And let's pause in our sun pose. So that's our sun flow. Our sun pose is down at the bottom, and our arms out, hands over top of our feet. And we can do the same thing that we did before. Thumbs are pulling back, and as we look to the right, we pull back on the left side, strong through the left side of the back. Let's switch sides. As we look the other way, opposite arm pulls back, working in opposition. So we have this lovely balance of opposites engaging our muscles, getting a deeper sensation through this pretty simple movement, right? We're just turning the head, but we're activating the arm moving in the opposite direction. Let's release. We'll put our toes forward. We're gonna alternate a side lunge, and then we'll add arms. We might even like to keep our hands on our hips as we go, because we're gonna shift our butts back as we bend one knee at a time. Coming back through center, and then bend the opposite knee. Some people like to add rotation with this. That's our simple movement. I'm going to make it less simple. Let's take our fingers in line sort of with our collarbones. As we come down, whichever leg we're bending, that same elbow pulls up. Inhale through center, elbow pulls up. So we're still working the muscles of the back. We're adding some rotation here. And rotation can be quite a yang movement. It can add quite a lot of heat. If we want to straighten the arms, we can. Bringing them out to T. And then yes, this might become a lot of coordination. Remember I said we could keep our hands on the hips the entire time? Or if we want a lot of coordination, feel free to do so. To double check that we're not really flopping our arms around, we can give our fingers a wiggle, making sure the muscles of the arms are working. Might look kind of silly, but it helps us. Okay, we can go once more each way. I hope we are feeling warm by this point. And as we come back through center, I'll give us the option for a deeper stretch. So we could do a more yang stretch, still building muscle, hands on our thighs, coming down only halfway. If we want to keep doing that work for the muscles in the back, careful we're not flopping and slouching. Tall spine, but we could take our arms out to T, or maybe working on that theme, thumbs to shoulders. But now we have to work the muscles in the back of the shoulders, working our posture muscles as we stay here. All right, let's come all the way up. All right, we'll walk our feet in a little bit and we'll do a transition exercise. So we're gonna use this one to transition from heat building into more cooling. Actually, one of my favorites to do. We're gonna pivot on our feet. So whenever we're ready, again, we might wanna take our hands to our hips, kind of like a golf swing. We're gonna pivot moving one hip and then the other. So we were doing faster heat building movements before. Let's do slower, more flowing movements. So we're bringing in the energy of water here. Our Kapha season is the energy of water, which is the energy of flow. So let's have a delicate flow, bringing the arms up, and like we're bowling, throwing the energy off one hand. We might even feel like we're dragging our fingertips along the surface of the water as we come through center. Matching breath to movement. Inhaling center and exhaling. We could flick the fingertips, releasing energy from our wrists, relaxing through the hands. So one thing we didn't talk about yet is closed heart syndrome. It's not really a medical term, but it's an expression for a certain shape in the body. So let's do one more here. And we'll come back through center. So if we have closed heart syndrome, think about uncomfortable or unpleasant or unwanted emotions. They're often closed emotions. So what have we been doing so far? Work squeezing the back to open up. What do most of our positive emotions look like? If you just won a contest or won a race, or you see your friends, you're happy and open. So in the winter, as it is cold, we tend to close in. So this kind of closed heart shape can come from temperature or emotions. So for today, we've been working on opening up. Let's do a couple more just to bring awareness to that so the heart stays lifted as we turn and twist. And we're going to keep the heart lifted even as we move into our stretches on the mat. So let's start to transition down. We could come up to the top of our mat and do a pretty typical swan dive down to the mat if we're feeling conventional and typical. Inhaling up, exhaling to swan dive forward. We can release the weight of the head, give the head a gentle shake and nod our heads yes. And let's make our way back into child's pose. So let's check this closed heart position. Now, yes, folding forward of the body may feel safe and secure and comfortable, but we want to make sure that we are not slumping or collapsing into our movements, that we feel comfortable and secure even as we're coming forward, but we're not slumping into it. So if we come into child's, might be more comfortable with our knees wide, and we can keep a tall spine while we're here. So we might want to drop to our forearms or stack our fists under our forehead. And yes, if some of us have a block at home, we could use a block underneath the head so that we can still rest somewhere. So let's use this as an opportunity for rest, and we'll just stay here a few rounds of breath, noticing how we're feeling. For some of us, child's won't be that comfortable. We might even want to lift the hips higher, or simply being in a seated position, taking a moment to turn our attention inward. Can we still be releasing shoulders down and back? And can our breath still be full? If we have a block, we can place it off to the side. Let's come up to all fours, and we'll do more of a yin variation of our cat and cow. And let's start with cat. So we'll spread our fingers wide. We can press down through the tops of the feet. Treat it like a strength exercise, like a push-up, like we're really working. We can tuck our tails, lengthen at the low back, lengthen at the mid back, let the head hang or even the chin tuck. So we're holding for our cat stretch instead of flowing through, but it might feel good to do a shift in our weight front and back or side to side. So even though we technically have stillness in the pose, we're not doing a bunch of different poses, we're just doing our cat stretch, noticing how it feels to invite in some subtle movements. So we still have this element of water. We have a gentle flow even as we hold. Let's take one more round of breath here. And then we'll pause in a cow pose. So creating length through the back of the thighs by lifting our bums, lengthening our bellies. We're shortening our back muscles here, so our back muscles still have some strength in them. We're reaching the chest forward and still shoulder blades down the back. And we don't really want to be jutting the chin forward or yanking the head back. So we can actually check maybe with one hand. Is there still length in the back of the neck as we reach forward? And if it feels good, maybe we want to shift the weight front and back as we did. And maybe the wrists need a break. So for those of us who don't want to be on the wrists, we could be doing the same position seated. Doesn't really matter. We could have still done our cat from here, and then our cow from here. And if we're okay to hold cow, then let's keep holding cow. Give it a couple more breaths in and out. And again, we can think of it as digestion. Let's pause back for a moment in child's pose. If we want our block, we can use it, but we don't have to. Taking a couple breaths in and out, noticing how we're feeling. Maybe we're slowing down the exhale at this point to help slow our bodies and hearts down. And then as we're ready, we can come to lie on our bellies. So it'll give us a couple of different options while we are here. We can start simply by propping ourselves up on our elbows in variation of Sphinx pose. Anything we can do to open the front line of the body. All right, so we'll be here for a little bit, and feel free to do all the different options with me. Or, I think more ideally, stick with the option that feels best for you here today. And every day might be a little bit different. So being up on our elbows might be way too high or just doesn't feel like the right variation for lots of us. We could walk the arms forward. We could have quite flat arms. Some of us might feel like it's a much better stretch to have the arms all the way forward. Or to do more of a cobra variation, to have the hands in front of the shoulders, more out to the side. This way we get some strength work for the back of the neck, pulling the nose away from the mat. And some of us, although probably not many of us, will feel more comfortable with the hands further back and maybe even with the arms straightening up. It is a big range of motion though, so probably not too many of us like the hands further back or like the arms pressing up. But as long as we're in length through the front of the body, we're in good shape. We can stay here, or we might like to lift one leg at a time, testing out the strength in the back line of the body. So some of us might still have our body weight on our forearms, that's okay. And it'll give us one more option here. We can reach our hands alongside our thighs. Some of us may even like to interlace, although it is pretty far back there. And we could still be lifting one leg at a time. Let's take a couple more breaths, whatever option you're doing. And then to digest this one, we can lower into sleeping crocodile, our forehead towards our hands, and probably it'll feel good to windshield wipe the legs to release the back and hips. Let's go ahead and press up and back. Coming into a seated position. Now, we may like to sit on a block or something like that, maybe even sitting in a chair. Otherwise, if we're okay sitting on the floor, let's sit on the floor. And we'll actually start with some neck stretches. I personally find that because, it's cold in the winter, sometimes as though it's going to help us stay warm, our body wants to pull our shoulders up here, and we're going to help them relax down a bit. So let's start by pressing our hands down on both sides, and we'll do a push one way and the other to loosen up this range of motion in the spine. Let's take the right hand down, maybe taking it all the way to the mat, And depending on range of motion in the left arm, we could be working on this theme, thumb to shoulder, or roll shoulder down and back, leave it open. Maybe hand behind head. Some of us might like the arm straight, which is more typical, but it depends on how you like it. I like to get that tricep stretch, so I like the arm bent. All the options are good. There's no good, better, best. They're all fantastic options. The most important part is that we use our brains to pick the option that feels beneficial. And since it is a slower style, guess what? We're going to stay here and enjoy the breath. You may notice the longer we're here, the more open we feel through the side of the body. Let's come back through center. If you seem to have lost feeling in your arm, give it a little shake. We're going to do the other side. Tall spine, relax those shoulders down. Remember how we did this at the beginning? Flex the wrists and press so that our muscles stay active to set up our base. And then whenever we're ready, finding a good spot, shoulders down and back. Maybe hand on shoulder, hand behind the head. My shirt keeps getting stuck. That's why I'm trying to... And then if we like, the arm could be straight, but we don't have to. I find this is a common yoga problem. If you practice in a tank top, you don't get it so much, but anytime you have sleeves, the shirt can get stuck. That's okay. We could just always readjust, and then we're ready for our pose. As we stay here and breathe, probably feeling more openness coming through the side of the body. And can we be inviting in the qualities of yin? Maybe we feel the body cooling, softening. Maybe we notice that we're feeling more introspective. As we move more slowly, we can turn our attention inward. We can be encouraging our bodies to still have a full breath in, but now a slow breath out. Coming back through center. Oh, if like me, your hand has gone numb, give it a good shake. That is normal, I promise you. All right, let's keep going with our spine. We'll do our necks. We're still gonna push down to keep alignment and some core stability, but we'll simply take ear to shoulder on one side. And then once we have that position set, we can rest our hands again. We just don't want to flop into the pose. We want to start from a neutral spine with some postural strength, and then we set the head, and then we're ready to hold. Since some of the muscles that help with breathing attach in the neck or come from the neck, you may find that the longer we're here, if we focus on a deep breath, the neck will really start to loosen up. If you have a shallow breath, you might not get so much of that. Imagining that the collarbones are growing wider on our inhale. Coming back through center, let's make it even. Pressing down to set our posture and letting ear go to shoulder. Once we feel that we're set, we can release the hands, letting gravity do the work with our neck, but resisting gravity with our posture. And if, like me, you feel the neck is really not symmetrical, asymmetrical flexibility, feel free to do a little bit of extra time on the tighter side. So I always find that this side is really loose, and I like to do a little bit of extra on the tight side. You can do the same. And then once we feel balanced, again, we'll come back through center, set our posture. Feel free to spend a little extra time if there's some tightness, but when we're ready, we'll keep our tall posture and let the chin drop to chest. Coming back through center, might feel nice to roll the shoulders again. We'll keep our tall posture and let's lift our gaze, stretching. Again, we're not just flapping back, but we're lengthening the neck. Lengthening from chin, we can picture lengthening chin to heart. Obviously, there's not a direct muscle that goes from our chin to our hearts, but it's that front line that we're opening up. All right, are we ready to get really yin? Let's get into some stretches, and we'll come onto our backs. So some of these will be quite lazy stretches, but you're doing them right, I promise you. We do not have to work hard to get the benefit out of these poses. So we'll come onto the back. And again, we can take a moment to think about digesting our work here. So maybe something like knees to chest or a long stretch will feel beneficial. And when we're ready, let's all plant our feet. And we'll come into a variation of pigeon stretch. So I'll show us the lazy version and then a more intense version. So we can take ankle over thigh and just hang out here. But if we feel okay with a twist, we can add a twist here as well. So the top foot comes to rest on the floor beside us. Now it might not make it all the way there. Maybe for you here today, you're just doing a little bit of a sway to the side and then you get a nice stretch, or might even feel like a kind of tension down the outside of the thigh. That's okay. So we go to the edge of sensation where we think, okay, any more and it's going to be too much. We want to back off from that edge. So if it feels painful, or if you notice you're clenching your teeth or you can't breathe, that's too far. But if it feels like there's a little bit of ease, even with that sensation, perfect, we're in a good spot. And we're just gonna yin while we're here. So our qualities of yin: stillness, coolness, passivity, receptivity, acceptance. Even breathing can be a practice of yin, because with our inhale, we have to accept the breath. So we are receiving energy from the breath. And in this case, that is a restorative energy that comes along with our stretching. We can think of this as our cocoon time, right? We're getting ready to be beautiful butterflies, but we have to have this time to go inside ourselves to transform. All right, let's switch sides. And that transformation is different for each of us, right? For you, that may be feeling more limber, more energized, a fresh perspective, an energy shift. But for each of us, it's important to have this cocooning time, right? Where we go inside, we're introspective, and we allow for a shift to happen. It doesn't always come though, right? But that's okay. Again, we may like the breath to be a full inhale and a long exhale. And that's a general rule of thumb for any time that we're stretching or winding down. So we may be inhaling for a count of 4, exhaling for a count of 8. And since we are holding these stretches a while, remember that even though we're staying in the same stretch, we still have the ability to move around. So we may be adjusting or shifting. We're not mindlessly, fidgeting or drumming our fingers. But if you feel like there's an evolution or a part of the body that kind of opens up, please do feel free to move and adjust as that happens. Let's come back through center. We'll come into what I think of as actually a pretty intense stretch, but you be the judge. Double diamond. So we open our knees into a butterfly stretch, and then we can do the same thing with our arms. So we might like to take our hands behind the head, or sort of up around the ears. And if this is quite an intense stretch for you, we can pull the elbows down a little lower, open the arms out a bit more, or even do just one leg at a time. But let's do as we've been doing. We'll hold here, we'll breathe, we'll hang out. Maybe we're bringing awareness to the front line of the body. So when we're cold and we're in all of our closed emotions, we tend to be tight through the front of the pelvis, belly, ribs, chest, front of the shoulders. So this position may feel quite different, quite uncomfortable, especially if you never sleep on your back. So it might be a very intense position for you to be in, and you want to bring one knee up at a time, or maybe only do one arm at a time. That's okay. And then maybe some of you out there are going, what? This is a stretch. I feel literally nothing. That might mean that you sleep on your back. You do a lot of open movements throughout your day. Maybe you do a lot of hip stretches or shoulder stretches. You do a lot of yoga. But this is all information. How we react to a pose, it's all information. So let's see if we can stay here at least a few more rounds of breath. But please do know that if we want to come out of the pose early, that's always an option. We'll keep making our poses even more subtle. Let's plant the feet, point the knees towards the ceiling, and we'll bring our arms out to T pose. You might feel more comfortable letting the knees knock in towards one another in a more restful position. And maybe we're sliding our shoulder blades down the back, readjusting, nodding our heads yes. And this is one of those poses that looks like we're doing almost nothing. But I actually recommend it to most of my clients and even myself on a regular basis, because if we bring the arms out to T and try to take a deep breath in, you may feel that you kind of catch your breath and you can't expand your rib cage across the front or even across the sides out into the underarms and the side of the ribs. So this can be a great pose for expanding our ability to breathe comfortably, expanding our lung capacity, and the ease with which we breathe. So even if it feels like, I'm not really doing anything, am I? I promise we're getting a very passive heart opener here. And let's stay for another minute again, breathing evenly. And with spring just around the corner, we may like to picture a field of butterflies, a beautiful meadow, knowing that that inner transformation is taking place inside each of us on a very subtle level. The tension across the shoulders and chest is beginning to release, with each breath becoming more supple through the front of the body. It may take quite a while for the body to respond and fully settle in here, but I tend to recommend to my clients to do this for a minute a day, and to do another one for a minute a day, taking the arms into a Y shape, kind of like YMCA, like we're spelling out the letter. And we may like to bring the legs straight for this one, or even a variation of star pose, making the body a bit more of a letter X than a letter Y. Maybe feeling more stretch through the underarms as we're breathing here. And for some of us, we're going to have to bend the elbows to make this a possibility. Maybe quite a big bend in the elbows, but that is perfectly fine. Knowing that with every breath, on a subtle level, we are loosening up, allowing for our rib cage to expand, opening the front of the heart. We can close our eyes, turn our attention inward, encouraging a full breath in and a long breath out. Today we have worked on our strong warrior energy, our sense of protection, safety, security, but also a softness and openness. And I always think that anything that we do opening the front of the body practices a sense of vulnerability, feeling comfortable even though we're not in a completely safe and protected position. But if we can get comfortable with this openness, we can breathe more freely. And this is supposed to encourage more positive emotions in our lives. Again, it may take quite some time for the body to settle in, and you may have to do this practice of breathing in a Y or T arm position 1 minute a day for a week or a couple weeks for it to start to give in. But of course, what we practice grows stronger. The more we do it, the easier it'll get. And our final practice will be simply our final relaxation or Shavasana pose. We can bring the arms down alongside the body. We may like to place hands on the belly to be more in tune with our breathing or belly and heart. Although it is a gentle passive heart opener or chest stretch, to bring the arms down by the side, palms up. We can stay here as long as we like, balanced between our yin and yang energies.